Americans with Disabilities Act, signed into law July 26, 1990.
What the ADA has allowed me to do is go to school, be able to go around into my community and participate as a equal member of society. It's allowed me to really enjoy just the common privileges that anybody else has.
You know, I'm from a deaf family, and ADA has made a big difference, especially in communication and being able to communicate in the world.
Well, as an advocate, it's certainly given me something to back me up to basically prove, or assist me in getting the changes that need to be made.
You know, when that question gets asked to me about what the ADA has meant to me, I usually think about this and how I probably would have answered this question 10 years ago. And I think if I was asked this question 10 years ago, I would say that I would have said things like, the ADA has meant having our public transportation system accessible. It's brought about, huge changes in our environment, like curb cuts everywhere, accessible routes in the public buildings, private buildings, having water fountains at the appropriate height for everybody.
Well, the one word that comes to mind when I think of the ADA is freedom, and it has given, I think, me and a lot of other people a lot more freedom than we had prior to when the ADA became law and prior to the Rehab Act of the 1970s.
Honestly, being able to find a place to go to the bathroom makes a huge difference. Before the ADA, there were no accessible bathrooms anywhere, and now, pretty much everywhere we go, I can enjoy the event and not have to worry about that.
What makes the Americans with Disabilities Act so great is that, one, 25 years after everybody else, it gave me, as a disabled person, civil rights.
What I think the ADA has done for students in society is made them to be more equal peers, especially with those that are in special education classes, to be able to interact with other peers and not be segregated.
Well, I think everything in our community is totally different. We have accessible transportation. When you go to any public venue, a concert or a baseball game or anything, you're able to see a lot of people with disabilities out there, particularly, as people with mobility impairments that you never saw before the ADA, because of the accessibility of the venues.
Well, the differences in the ADA 20 years from now, say from the beginning of the ADA, I would say at this point is, I think you see a lot of people with disabilities much more included into society. I think that the integration mandate of the ADA, in terms of at least being able to access private businesses, being able to use transportation, is much greater now than it was 20 years ago.
20 years after the ADA, I can leave my house and go just about anywhere in this valley and not worry about curb cuts, not worry about if the bus is successful, and not worry about if I can get into a building.
Over the last 20 years, the ADA, slowly but surely, has made more places, office buildings, doctor's offices, whatever have you, little by little, more accessible to persons using wheelchairs.
Oh, the difference in the last 20 years basically is being stuck in our homes to being able to venture out. Venture out of our homes, out of our neighborhoods. As I said earlier, I was able to fly for the first time 10 years ago in a real airplane, as a matter of fact. Before that, I'm still flying in my chair these days.
I think my most interesting ADA story is that I was on the south lawn of the White House when President Bush signed the ADA into law. It was 20 years ago, but I remember it clearly and fondly. It was quite an experience.
The most interesting ADA story for me personally is that being able to use ADA paratransit enabled me to participate in Camelot Therapeutic Horsemanship for 3 seasons, which ran September to May, 3 years in a row. Camelot is an equestrian program for people with disabilities.
The most interesting one have to do with the smaller mom and pop businesses that don't realize that they have to comply with Title III of the ADA. They kind of sometimes get their messages mixed up about Title I, thinking that, well, I don't have 15 employees, therefore I don't have to comply with the ADA. But Title I involves employment, not access to goods and services, which is Title III.
A legislator that I had known for a number of years and testified for before a number of years saw me come into a hearing room in my wheelchair and said, surprised, "I didn't know you were disabled." I had been disabled at that time for close to 15 years. I didn't change. Their perception did.
Again, when I think about pre-ADA, I always think about institutions where most persons with disabilities were. If they didn't have to support their families, pre-ADA was either institutionalization in an institution or maybe in their neighborhood or their home, because of they couldn't get out and and go down the street or go to the store, even go to a theater or whatever.
Pre-ADA for when it comes to mental illness, excuse me. When it comes to mental illness, we haven't made as much headway in the workplace as a lot of other disabilities. Pre-ADA, we were not able to request some of the accommodations that we're able to request now. We've really had to kind of piggyback on other disabilities when it comes to treating ADA or with ADA in the workplace.
What's interesting is you say pre-ADA, and I think of 1990 was when the ADA was, but it took a while, from what I remember, maybe from 92, 93 or whatever, it took a while for it to sink in. So like you had people like in this mentality of like they still had to get accustomed to it.
Well, a good pre-ADA example for me was the condition of any kind of van transportation that I used. Before the passage of the ADA, I lived in southern Wisconsin, and the condition of the vehicles that transported people who used wheelchairs was just appalling.
Well, pre-ADA, I remember, and let me talk about that hotel fire that I was involved in. I remember when I was 14 years old, and I arrived at a hotel, and they had, the red light system. I never thought of it, I just thought, in school it would be the same system. There was a red light system. Never really thought anything about it. But with that experience, what I went through, boy, it did change my life, and it really did. The light wasn't enough. And let me tell you, the fire started real early in the morning. The light went off. I was already knocked out. I couldn't hear. I was deaf. I can't see or hear because it was such a light red blinking. No, like today we have this bright strobe light, which is required. Now that is a tremendous difference, a big improvement.
Are we done yet? No, we are not. Because although there are many places that still believe that accessibility is a grab bar in the bathroom and a parking space, there are many threats against the ADA trying to weaken its provisions and making it more difficult for us to clean up those spots where accessibility is not the norm. Yes, there's a lot to be done.
there's always more to do, and we have to continue changing attitudes. We have to continue changing our own attitudes. People with disabilities, part of that area is employment. We still need to break down the barriers in the area of employment for people with disabilities.
Mental illness is actually fairly new to being recognized. It was originally recognized within the ADA, but it's kind of fairly new to excuse me, it's fairly new to a lot of workplace situations. There's a lot of stigma that's associated with mental illness, and what the media picks up on is a lot of the more violent issues that people with a mental illness may get to eventually, a lot of workplace violence issues, things like that.
I think the ADA has come a long way, but there are still things that need to be made more accessible, such as some of the things that I've noticed are the accessibility in stores and restrooms, and the ability as a wheelchair user to be able to use those type of things. A lot of people just need to be made more aware of the progress they can make towards the better of the ADA.